I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my skinny rich friend.
It's Mozz.
Yes, and Ben is in the far background if you can hear him. He's drawing Mario. Hey, Maz, how you doing, my
Right
good
on.
friend?
I'm
Tonight,
doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So tonight's episode is Cold Steel, Season 1, Episode 8, Russo opens up to Madani about his past. Sarah shares her concerns about her son with Frank, and a decoy operation takes a turn. Director was Antonio Campos. Writers, of course, Jerry Conway. He is the original writer of Punisher. And then we also have, created by Stephen Lightfoot, Felicia D. Henderson was our gets written by credit this week. Angela Lamanna gets our story editor. And our hardest working man in show business this week is Ken Christensen, staff writer. This was an episode written by a female writer. So if you felt this was a little more touchy-feely, that's why. No.
Well, no, that's what I was going to say is I liked about the episode. If you're going to take a break for the action, at least filled it with some really good character building stuff, and which is what I think we got a lot of here, and that's what I really dug.
Oh, and there was some amazing character pieces here. I mean, just
Yeah.
Okay, so on a scale of 1 to Mephisto himself, how evil is Billy Russo after the first scene?
Oh man, and that's not even the half of it.
Oh yeah, well yeah, but I mean, you open with that. You open with him, with the whole. So there's a film called Mr. Frost.
Mm-hmm.
Which stars Jeff Goldblum as the devil.
What?
Jeff Goldblum as the devil. It's called Mr. Frost. It's a great film.
I gotta see this.
Oh yeah, you really should. You really should. He plays a fantastic, and this is like peak Goldblum when he is beautiful and young and all that sort of stuff.
What is it called,
Mr. Frost?
Mr. Frost. Interesting.
Anyway, sorry, I'm just having children here. Yes. So okay. So in it, he is insanely fastidious. He is Mr. Frost. He is the devil. And what is one of the most perfect things I love about it, and it's this thing that this is what defines the devil to me, is that when we open up, he is baking a cake, and he bakes this beautiful cake, and he takes a picture of it. He takes one bite, and he throws the cake away. And there's this cop who's come to his house to talk to him about some murders that were around his home, and he says, "Oh, please forgive me. I love to cook, but I have no appetite." And you basically have this idea that he desires perfection, but has no ability to really enjoy that perfection. And I think about this in this moment when we see Russo making himself perfect here, taking this time to be perfect for this moment when he's going to go see his mother in the old folks' home, and this is one of those moments that makes you almost think it's meant to be touching and beautiful with regard to Mr. Russo about him taking care of his invalid mother. And then you basically realize this is a Seven kind of situation, and this poor woman is drugged up and kept hostage.
Amazingly dark.
Oh, and so well presented, too. I mean, when you open a film with just the first 5 minutes being that kind of a crazed bit of evil.
Build up.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. You know that it's going to be a good episode. And throughout it, we get one more thing after another just to let us know how good this episode is going to be. We get Madani, and shortly thereafter we get Madani and Russo talking, and, you basically get Russo's backstory of being this abused orphan, and basically he got abused because he didn't want to. He didn't want to do for the gentleman the other thing.
Right.
Which is it's one of these moments to make you feel sympathy for the devil, and
Right. Right.
and those are always enjoyable. And this,
Yeah, it's interesting.
yeah,
It's interesting to watch his struggle develop because he's presented as this evil guy, and maybe he is, but he does sort of have moments where he questions what it's all worth, like the fact that he has to go after Frank, and at certain moments where he's dealing with I think it's Rollins,
Rollins,
where
yes.
yeah, where he really seems to struggle with it. I wonder what that's about, or I wonder, like, has he always been this bad, or like what happened to him after he left the
Well,
military?
I think what the crux of Russo's character is that he's a man who's evil with every reason to be evil. We always hear the story of the man who had every reason to be evil, but who decided to be good.
Right.
And I think in this episode, and then in the next episode, we're going to get something similar, and it is about characters that are meant to be, in many ways, parallels to Frank Castle. People who have experienced things, but when they experienced it, they made different choices than Frank did. And sometimes they made better choices, and sometimes they made worse choices. Essentially saying that,
could it happen to any of us?
Well, as the Joker says, one bad night,
Right.
or one bad day. But well, I mean, not that it could happen to any of us, but that there are certainly better choices that Frank Castle could have made when he endured his tragedy. But there are much worse choices he could have made as well. And I think that what Billy Russo is he's a man who, and to Billy Russo, I think the point of him is that he is Frank Castle is a man who had tragedy thrust upon him in one fell swoop. Whereas for Billy Russo, it was a lifetime of tragedies. 1,000 cuts, each driving him a little more mad. And who had the greater tragedy, Frank or Russo, it's impossible to tell, but the choices they made thereafter speak a lot about who they were as people. And perhaps even... Yeah.
What I find interesting is that Frank had another identity thrust upon him as being the vengeful, grieving father. That was something he could adopt, and something that was a mission for him. People like Russo never really got an opportunity to redefine themselves as anything other than just an instrument of war or of death or of force, and so that's, I think, something he struggles with too.
Yeah, but then again, perhaps there's a point to be made there in that, Russo's lack of redefinition is a choice by Russo. That at any point, there's that great moment a few episodes back where he's talking about how many ladies he has. And Frank says to him, "Aren't you ever going to settle down?" And he says, "What? And deprive all the other women of all this?" And well, at once it is both beautiful and wacky and silly and the joyful joie de vivre of young men at war. I think there's a more telling aspect of it, which is the fact that there are those things we fear, and sometimes that which we fear the most is that which is domestic in our lives. The thing that is most frightening is sometimes the thing that is the least likely to kill us, but is what we will die doing regardless. The idea that you will die an old man having lived a life with another person is 1,000 times more frightening than the idea that you may face an enemy in battle and die that way. When when Lewis mentioned a few episodes again about knowing who the enemy was.
Mm.
You can put that into his own insanity, and of course his own insanity plays into that dramatically. But at the same time, a big part of that is the fact that, yeah, when you have a defined enemy, life is easy. The hard thing is to actually face the possibility that your enemy isn't defined. That you have to run this gauntlet of life and not know what is the right choice. When you have an enemy, the right choice is easy. The enemy, that which hurts your enemy is the right choice.
Right.
But when the enemy is not clear, then there is no right choice to make. There is simply moving forward with life. And that is the adventure that Billy Russo chooses not to take. And for what it's worth, that Madani chooses not to take. Madani is likewise in the same boat, though in her case it is someone who is given all privilege in her life, yet makes the choices that she will still avoid the greater danger of living a life. Just a little bit of armchair philosophy there. But back into the story.
Well, I think Frank and Micro having to deal with Frank and his wife, that was, I thought, a great scene.
Yes. Well, and this is one of the things that I love best about this. Okay. And there's two aspects of this. First one I wanted to mention was about the impotence of Rollins. And I think that there is maybe an intentional, or maybe not even an intentional aspect of it. But, when you see Rollins talking about how this used to be a country of industry and yada, 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 when he's talking to Russo. And, of course, Rollins has never been a man that, he may have invested in industry, but he had no part in a nation that built itself, Yet somehow he feels personally offended by the fact that, things are now made elsewhere. And likewise, in that impotence, the fact that Frank took a shot at him, and this is the conversation that they had before, what they think is the Men in Black finally coming for them. Which is that, that despite what they did, Rollins can't come after them. Because Rollins has much less power than they imagined. That they're imagining this great big black bag, Big Brother conspiracy run by Rollins, and in truth, Rollins is just one little piece of a greater corrupt world that they can't, that is unable to, that is only able, and to give you a point, it is only able to wreak out vengeance when its targets are properly lulled into security and not ready for it. You think, and this goes to this whole idea. When you think about Gunner living on his land for so long, afraid. But of course, that fear basically made him an impossible target for them until they really pulled out the stops, which comes up here. That they pulled out the stops for because Russo says, I sent my guys into this mess, and now my guys are dead, and I can't have guys that can be traced back to me if we go any deeper. Which of course is, and Rollins is, well, I'll throw money at it, and that's his answer. And of course, again, I'll throw money at it is the ultimate imminent answer. I don't have any
that's the ultimate bad guy move. Well,
what it is a man with no real power of his own. To give you an example, the Kingpin would never simply say, I'll throw money at it.
Yeah.
The Kingpin would throw money at it because it's the easy move. But if he had to actually
crush
someone's head with his bare hands, he would totally go mountain on you. He's
yeah.
But anyway, yes, getting back to the point you made, but this ties into my whole overarching theme of this episode. Basically, they're having this conversation. They're saying about how Rollins really doesn't have any power against them, and then all of a sudden, all the feeds to Micro's family's house go out, and Micro starts freaking out because he knows the Men in Black are after them. That there's black helicopters over his house. His family is being murdered even as we speak. And then again, to Micro's own cowardice, can't go himself. He doesn't say, I don't. Yeah.
Is it cowardice or is it just, prudence?
Well, whatever it is a man saying, I can't go myself to deal with this. I need someone else to do it because it is too dangerous. And
yeah, but I mean, it's a different situation when you have a Frank Castle at hand,
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, that is the difference, having a Frank Castle available for such moves.
Yeah.
But
yeah, it must be rough though.
Well, yeah, and this definitely comes back to eat at Micro later because after this scene we do have another scene where Micro needs to assert his masculinity after some whiskey. But what I loved about this is that when Frank gets there, what is the cause of the blackout? Was it black helicopters? Was it the Men in Black coming to destroy it all?
Just domestic problems with the kids.
Yes, the mom unplugged the Wi-Fi. Which, for what it's worth, is one of these weird things because there's sort of a suggestion in that is that in this entire time that Micro has been in hiding, his family's Wi-Fi has never just gone out.
Right.
Not for nothing. What kind of amazing Stark Technologies Wi-Fi do they have in this Marvel Cinematic Universe world? Where it's no, that Wi-Fi just works. You'd actually have to physically disable it in order for your Wi-Fi to stop working. It's what? See, that's why I always say, the movies we
definitely
see,
don't have Spectrum.
Everyone always says, oh, if you lived in a world with Tony Stark and Reed Richards, things would be so much more advanced. It's look at the computer technology. Look at Wi-Fi that is just 100% all the time, 5 bars. Look at cell phones that can hack into computer systems. These are amazing technological advancements, even though they don't look that amazing, because do technological advancements ever look that much more amazing? They usually look like what you already had in your house. A TV is just a radio with a picture screen, and the radio is just a box. So it's just, you have a box. Sometimes the boxes get thinner, sometimes they get bigger, sometimes they get, more colorful, but it's just a box in your house, and that's technology, and that is your computer as well, just a box.
Well, I mean, but if you could take that box and, I guess the short way of getting to what I was trying to say is I'm excited about augmented reality. If I can just wear these cool glasses and then all of a sudden on the tabletop in front of me, a movie is being played out in 3D, in full angles, you know what I mean? It's actually there in miniature form. That would be amazing,
Well, yeah, augmented reality is a great idea. And it's great if you're in your house watching augmented reality. In fact, honestly, here's something I'm going to tell you right now. There is nothing that prevents the creation of a set of glasses that turns regular TV into 3-dimensional TV. Because all you really need to do is just have a set of glasses that just do a stereoscope with
right. But I'm talking about more than that. I'm talking about like holographically representing something right in front of you, almost as if it's there,
And that's great if you're sitting in your chair. The problem is when people start walking around, and people always want to walk around with augmented reality. Which is the biggest problem with Pokemon Go. It's oh, look, there's a Bulbasaur across the street. Let me run and get it. And you're looking at your screen or you're looking at your glasses and you're not looking both ways before you cross the street.
Right.
We had a conversation about augmented reality a little while ago on superconnectivity, which basically that's the problem with augmented reality is that augmented reality is a great idea, but if it distracts you more when you're outside of your home, it's dangerous.
Well, yeah, but I mean, everything is a process. Nothing comes out of the door ready for us to consume the way it should be consumed in the safest way. We figure it out as we go.
Well, exactly.
As a technology, I think it'll be very interesting to see where it goes. And obviously, we'll get a little crazy with it, just like when the internet first happened and there were ads everywhere. And then we learn, hey, maybe this isn't the best way to do it. And we find a nice middle road.
Well, exactly. Well, of course, in time. But essentially, but of course, then what happens is everyone starts to game
Take it
the
for granted
system.
again?
Well, no, they game the system. So, for example, if you know that Pokemon can't cross the street, which is essentially which is how you solve the Pokemon in the middle of the street problem, is you just have you put into the system an ability to recognize where streets are, give a space, and make sure that the Bulbasaur never goes into the street, and then suddenly everyone starts cordoning off the Bulbasaur so they can't go in the street because they know they can't cross the street. And, it's like a vampire can't cross the river, and then you can slay it. There's lots of and not for nothing, that just becomes part of the game. Then you adapt the game to solve that problem. You have the Bulbasaur climb trees, but that's augmented reality, and there's amazing technology that already exists for augmented reality. Just the fact that you can run an augmented reality program on your phone so that you can play Pokemon Go for all its flaws. The main problem with Pokemon Go isn't that Pokemon Go wasn't a huge success or wasn't that it worked great, but it was just that, there's an actual liability issue that we have to sort of figure out. Do we want to spend the money to do the extra programming to solve the liability issue? I've always said that, it would be great if you could have a little Marvel Comics app that when you walked around New York City, you could hold it up and it would show you where you'd see Spider-Man swinging across the thing, you'd see a battle between Dr. Octopus and, but then everyone's going to start running towards the battle wherever you put the battle in the program. And also, it becomes this thing that it's only a useful program if you live in Manhattan. If you lived in Iowa, the superheroes, most you'd see is, look, Thor's flying overhead. That's why they call it flyover country.
Yeah, no, but you would be able to have your city, Cincinnati will be downloadable next week, Cincinnati's coming, and then wherever you are, you can get it, and then your city would be mapped and programmed in so things could peek out behind corners and whatnot. That's a pretty cool idea.
And for what it's worth, Marvel's already had the 50-state initiative where every state had its own superhero team. So you'd actually have. There's a big marketing opportunity here where you could actually have professional sports teams, but professional superhero teams, all owned by Disney, that they would create your little augmented reality thing, and it's like, yes, and then you'd have people saying, our superheroes are the best here in Iowa.
Imagine if you could play fighting games or war games or stuff like that, and there could be actual professional video game players behind the controllers, but people walking around on the streets with their augmented reality glasses could look up and see the fight happening in Manhattan,
Oh, yeah, well, that would be interesting. And
oh, man, that would be amazing.
Well, yeah, that would be great if it's like, okay, you pay your money. Tonight, you're going to get to see, Superman battle, whatever in 3D. Superman will be played by, you get Superman versus Lex Luthor, of course, and it's going to be Superman played by, Andre the Giant and Lex Luthor played by Hulk Hogan, because I don't know any references past 1988. I'm sorry, when it comes to fighters. But, and then you'll actually have that little video game, and you'll see how it goes. But, you could have that, and you could have it up in the night sky, and everyone gets to look up and see it.
No, I don't mean like that. I mean like it would be happening on the streets, like say Hulk versus Wolverine is happening tonight. You pay your thing, you put your glasses on, everybody's walking around their day as if it's nothing's happening. But if you paid your ticket price, your glasses will show, you'll see the city clear as day, but the glasses will on top of the city project the image of Hulk fighting Wolverine. And then you'd have to follow the fight as it progressed through the actual city.
Mm-hmm. And that would be interesting, but then you have that basic problem that I said. In that case, Hulk and Wolverine are fighting in the city, and they're smashing through things, but you have to keep people from running into the street to get a better view.
Right.
That is where it gets to be a problem. We're a little off topic on this episode, Mozz. So let's get back to the episode. So essentially, to catch up, Frank
goes and visits Sarah, and they do kiss. I feel bad for Sarah. That's who I feel really bad for.
Oh, Sarah is like such. First off, because Frank is like basically, took a vow of chastity, which is like, really, Frank? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, he's not going to do his friend's wife, but still, it's you get this very, part of me always imagines that, if you're going to be this guy who's detached from everything, there should at least be a positive aspect to it as well. And Frank is basically a warrior monk, He is.
Well, and I think he has feelings for Karen.
Well, I think it'd be hard. I think you couldn't be human and not have feelings for Karen. I think you couldn't be human and be in that moment and not see this beautiful woman who is reaching out. And not for nothing, anything you want to say about Micro, he apparently took really good care of his family. Because as far as I know, Karen still doesn't have a job, but this is all funds they had for the house and the car and the kids' school and whatnot, and they're still, they can still afford a nice Chardonnay. So, hooray for Micro there. He was definitely a good dad, took care of his family. But it is certainly a, it's kind of a sad moment for both Frank and, wait, you said Karen. Are we talking about Karen Page?
Sarah,
okay.
Yeah,
I'm probably I'm thinking Karen Page, which is next episode.
Right.
But yes, but no, I am thinking of Sarah. What we're talking about, I just forgot her name. She wants a person in her life.
Yeah.
But Frank has taken his vow of celibacy, and not for nothing, it makes you wonder if maybe the man was always kind of a little bit asexual. He goes for these long tours, and maybe is part of that just because, he doesn't want to be there with his family. He doesn't want, not necessarily doesn't want to be there with his family, but doesn't want to have to be in that point where has to say, look, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
Is Punisher an asexual superhero? I'm just saying there's a lot of aces that would certainly love, although Punisher may not be the best example since he is so violent, but it would be interesting to have something that was anyway, but yeah, so there's this flirty. Frank is a good man. He's both a gentleman, doesn't want to take advantage of a woman who has had a couple of glasses of Chardonnay, and is also a gentleman in the fact that he's not going to betray his friend.
Right.
But
but it can't make her feel good,
No, it doesn't make her feel good. It makes her feel like basically stuff on a shingle, which he doesn't want to do either, and he feels a little bad about that too.
Yeah.
I tell you, Frank Castle's a very, very complex dad figure, though. Because, of course, the son brought a knife to school. And Frank does a whole thing about how knife's better than a gun. This is after the Wi-Fi is back up, and Frank goes back and tries to be a dad for a few minutes, which makes Micro.
Yeah, but to be a dad in only the way that Frank can by holding a knife up to the kid's throat. But it works. It gets him to let down the walls and finally just say what's bothering him.
Yeah.
So I guess it was successful.
Well, I mean, not for nothing, with Micro and Frank, what you really have is the reverse problem for each of them. For Frank, his family died and are frozen in amber as the family he lost. In Micro, their father died. And so every time Frank goes there, he sees what it would have been like for his family to not have him. And that's the dichotomy we see here. And it is some great family drama. I think everyone really needs to really watch it. I hope people have watched The Punisher by now. It actually is a good series, I think. I think this is a very
I like it a lot.
Yeah, I enjoy watching it every week. And what I think is most interesting when we get to the action here, because there is action, which is that Madani and Stein hatch a plan to draw out Rollins.
Yeah, use the bug to their advantage.
Yeah, they don't know it's Rollins, they don't know who it is, but they know that people are after Frank Castle. And so they create this elaborate sting to try and get them, because they do know that Madani's office is bugged, and they do present that they have this plan, which they then don't post because they don't want it hacked, which leaves everybody, including Frank and Micro, in the dark, so that Frank and Micro can't show up. But when Rollins' people, which is Russo and a bunch of guys he fired from his group, unfortunately Lewis didn't get called for that. Could have solved a lot of problems in the next episode had they just called up Lewis for that run.
Yeah, really. That man just needs a purpose and something to keep him busy.
Yeah, well, we all need him to have a purpose, is what we learned in this episode. But basically, the guys rush this scene, and they get ambushed by Homeland Security. But these are Anvil super soldiers, so they do, although they all get murdered in the process. They do take their own. They do take their own efforts, and again, for the evilness of Russo, when one of his guys is shot, Russo just shoots his guy because he can't carry him out, and if he leaves him behind, he's gonna rat him out.
Liable to talk, yeah.
Exactly.
You can't have him talking.
So you know what? Sorry, buddy, he didn't make the cut.
But I think they all know that going in too, don't you think?
No, that's the thing.
No?
If these guys were good enough soldiers to know that they weren't getting out, they wouldn't have been cut. They wouldn't have killed all those civilians to get kicked off of the get fired from Anvil. Basically, what happened at their last thing is they killed a bunch of civilians because they just assumed they could get out, rather than thinking that, what, my duty is to defend our target, our charge, and if I die, I die. So they made that choice then, and then they died horribly. Well, now they died horribly, but then they got out, because they killed a bunch of civilians. Killed a bunch of civilians on YouTube, and they got fired for it. It's how it happens. But Russo's only got out, and then Stein gets the drop on him. And he's got him, and he has him down, and he unmasks Russo, and he sees Russo. And then,
he has a momentary lapse in focus.
Well, we get that scene that Frank described a little bit earlier about a guy with the knife against the guy with the gun.
Ah, right.
And it's that parallel, and here we see the guy with the knife take out Stein. And Madani finds him, and man, you're watching that, and you're just waiting for him to say Billy or Russo as he gurgles on his own blood. But for what it's worth, I don't know if it's realistic or not, it hits that point that you don't get that moment. You don't get to say Russo or Billy or whatever. You just die. And you die. And that's what happens. And then what I think is the most out cold scene in the whole episode of Out Cold Scenes, our closer is Madani in the bathtub, covered in blood, washing the blood off, and who helps her wash the blood off, Mozz?
Oh my God, Mr. Russo.
Yes.
Washing the blood that he put there.
Exactly. And this is the just that moment of the whole thing. Oh, and that's how you end that episode. And man, it is a powerfully strong episode. Cold Steel, aptly named. It is really good. And next episode is Front Towards Enemy. Has its moments too, and we're going to talk about that in a few. But you'll hear it next week if you keep on listening to our Capes and Lunatics podcast. Mozz, we actually got moved to the Sidekicks podcast, and then fan demand said, no, put the Netflix shows with Mozz and Chaz back on the main feed. Which I would have said, keep us on the Sidekicks feed. Maybe then we're the draw to the Sidekicks. There's a lot of great shows on the Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks feed. You get the Newcastle Crew and other things, all there that you can listen to with great intellect and wit from the rest of our talented cast here at Capes and Lunatics, from Lilith Hellfire and Phil Parrish and Tyler Patrick, etc. But, we got put back on the main feed of Capes and Lunatics, which is why you're listening to this if you've already listened to Super Connectivity and the main Capes and Lunatics podcast. But anyway, getting back to this, if people would like to reach out to you, well, actually first, Mozz, final thoughts on the episode?
No, I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the little bit more of each character that we got to know. A little deeper into why they are the way they are. And it was, I think, a great little break, what sets up the explosiveness of the next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Explosiveness, apt word. Okay, Mozz, if people would like to reach out to you and talk to you and find out all the things that make Mozz the skinniest, richest man in New York that everyone loves to talk to and be friends with, how can they find you, Mozz?
Well, yeah, they could find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor, or email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me in that old-fashioned email way, the way our Mozz and Poz once said, at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog, all one word, @gmail.com. And, of course, follow me on the Twitters as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., sometimes Legend of Tomorrow, maybe Krypton, who knows? At Charlie Esser, that's CharlieEsser, looking at 2 E's in the middle for quality. And now, dear listeners, we absolve you for all your many, many sins. And we would say, go forth and sin no more, but we know you will return.